Good afternoon and welcome back. We've just relaunched that new link, so we're just giving everyone just a moment to get logged in. If you could just let us know in the chat window if you are able now to see the video, and then we'll get started again. Just going to give it 1 minute just for some feedback here. If you could just let us know if you can see and hear us now. Okay, looks like we are back, so thank you for your patience, and we're going to start that again. Okay, so again, we are looking at digital assessment tools and highlighting the Catholic graduate expectation of self-directed, responsible, lifelong learners, and helping our students by giving them descriptive feedback through the different forms of assessment. So we will begin with looking at Nearpod. And again, we'll just give everyone just a moment to get settled. And it looks like everyone's almost in here, and we'll continue with Nearpod. Thank you for your patience as we get going. Okay, looks like we're ready to get started now. So we're going to be looking at Nearpod through the lens of assessment as for and of learning as outlined in Growing Success. And we'll look at how to use Nearpod for those different types of assessment. So if we're looking at assessment for learning, we're talking about the more formative and diagnostic types of assessment that you would use at different moments during those learning units or time frames that we can use to gather evidence from students to drive our instruction, to help us adjust our classroom instruction and meet the needs of the students in our class. We're also going to look at the possibility of the assessment as learning piece and how we can include the use of Nearpod for self and peer assessment type of assessment tools, and really offer students the chance to set their own personal learning goals and to advocate for their own learning. And also looking at the assessment of learning, the more summative type of assessment that we're using to measure a moment in time and record and report on that student's learning achievement. So now I'm going to take you to explore the website Nearpod. And Nearpod.com is where teachers will create an account. Students will not need to create an account to be able to interact with Nearpod. They will enter in through either Nearpod.com or through the iPod app Nearpod. And they will use a code generated from your lessons to be able to enter in and participate in that learning moment. So I'm going to show you the different aspects of what that could look like. So once you create your account, you're going to come into a home page here. You'll notice that you have a few options. The first is your library, and that's where you will store any of the lessons you build or slideshows that you build within here. Also have Explore, and that's where there's some pre-made lessons that are ready to use. Some of them are free and some of them are paid lessons. The Join button is where students will come to join in on one of your slideshow lessons. Create is where you're going to build those slideshows. And Reports, and that's where it's going to save the student input that they put into those slides. So unlike PowerPoint or Keynote that also are slideshow programs, this is a more of an interactive slideshow where students will be able to input onto slides, and you'll be able to share those slides back and forth between teacher and student. So I'm going to go ahead and come into Create. And you'll notice that right away it's going to generate for you this presentation. So you can go ahead and rename that, whatever it is you'd like to name it. And right away, it's going to prompt you to add a slide. So when I say add a slide, it's going to give me 3 choices. So content, click on that, you can see if you're building lessons, so you might choose to put in a slide that has a photo or some text into it, so you would just add a slide. You could import a video or audio if you had that to put into your lesson. You'll notice that there's also slideshow where you can import an entire slideshow. If you've already created some type of presentation or lesson in PowerPoint or Keynote, you can import all of the slides at once through slideshow. There's also some other features, field trip, etc. Those are upgraded features, so we're not going to focus on those today. We're going to stick with what's free and very useful for educators. Adding web content is an upgrade as well. And just to make you aware, that's where you can add in web pages for your students to interact right inside of your presentation. But for today, in assessment, we're actually going to focus on the add activity. So when I say add activity, you'll notice that it pops up some options here. So I can ask students an open-ended question. So you can see here I can build a quiz or a type of assessment for the students. I can ask them a poll question that perhaps doesn't have a particular right answer. I can ask them a quiz question that's like a multiple choice where I can assign a correct answer. And my favorite feature is the draw it feature, which allows students when they're on a touch device like the iPad to use their finger and write right onto the slide, which is really powerful when you're collecting that just-in-time feedback and in-the-moment assessment. Whether it's for a minds-on activity or a diagnostic activity, you'll be able to get immediate feedback from your students. And again, as you continue, there's some more options like fill in the blank. Those are also upgrades. So we're going to focus on these 4 here. I'm just going to show you how quick it is to build a slide. So for a quiz feature, I can go ahead and put in different responses here. And I can add as many as I want, as many multiple choice options. And I can select which one is the correct answer. So it'll actually generate the correct and mark that for me and give me percentages of how many of my students got that response correct, which is really powerful when I'm trying to get feedback to drive my lesson and whether I might need to change it right on the spot or whether the students have a general understanding and I'm ready to continue. Depending again on that type of assessment, or I might be using this as an assessment of piece where I'm looking for particular students and whether they were able to understand and get the correct answers. So once you go ahead and do that, you would just simply say save, and it's going to generate that question onto a slide. So you would go ahead and go back to add a slide, and whether it's content or adding in another activity, you would go ahead and continue building the different types of responses, questions and responses that you want from your students. Once you were happy with all of that, you would come down here to where it says publish, and it would go ahead and, oh, there has to be at least 2 slides, so we'll just add one more in there really quickly. And once you're ready to publish that, it's going to ask you to name your presentation and label it. So here you can add a description, assign your grade level, and whatever subject area perhaps you were attaching that to, and say publish. And what that's going to do is it's going to publish it right into your library here. So here are all the saved presentations that I've created in Nearpod. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple to show you some of the possibilities and how you might use that. And as I hover over it, you'll notice it gives you 3 options here. If I wanted to change or add or edit it at all, I would just say edit, and it would take me back into that previous screen. Now I have the choice of a live session or a homework session. A live we're going to use for kind of that on-the-spot feedback from our students. The homework option is an upgrade, so we're not going to go there today. So I'm going to go ahead and click live session. I was in that one, so it's just asking me. So Here you'll see it automatically creates a code, and it's going to generate that code new each time you launch this lesson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that would look like in the student view, because students see something different than you do. So I'm going to go ahead on the iPad here, just bring that down so you can kind of see both of them at the same time. So what I'm going to do is have the students go to that little orange box where it says join the session and type in that code, which is not case sensitive, which is great for the primary students. And I'm going to go ahead and ask them to join that session, and it didn't like that, so I'm just going to try that again. And once I do that, it's going to take just a moment to kind of load that presentation, and then it's going to ask for their name. So we have a conversation with the students about what I would like them to enter there, either just their first name, initials, or some teachers have their students numbered off, student 1, student 2, student 3, and they could go ahead and hit that. And once they do that, it's going to take them to the first question. So I'm just going to show you on teacher view. So what I've done is I've used the drawing feature here, and it's asking the students to label each of their images. So if I come back to student view, you'll notice that it's going to ask me the same to label those. And if you look down in the bottom here, it gives them some draw features. So if I press on the pencil, I can increase the width of the writing or change the color of it. There's a highlighter tool, there's a text tool, there's even picture tools. And I'll show you what you might use those for. So in this case, it's just asking me to go ahead and label those fractions so that you can see the students could write right on there. And once they're happy with that, they would just say send. It's going to always ask them if they're confirming that they would like to send that. And once they do that, if you notice over here on teacher view, as it syncs up, all of the students' responses are actually going to come into my view live. So whether I'm looking at this on a desktop or whether I'm looking at it on an iPad that I'm using in my hand in the classroom, you can see now that those student responses will come in. And if I had 20 students, you would see 20 different images here. And I could go ahead and click on any one of those and blow that up. So you can see I could kind of flip through all of the student responses and immediately get some feedback as to whether I could continue this lesson if I'm using it as an assessment piece at the beginning of a Minds On or something like that, or whether I needed to pause and redirect that lesson to meet the needs of those students. You'll also notice that there's a button here to share. So depending on what you were using it for, if I wanted to highlight something with the students, if I said share on a particular image that came in, and we look back at the iPad, it's actually going to push that back out to the students' iPads. So a great way if you wanted to highlight a student response, but depending on what type of assessment you're doing, you may or may not want to do that. And I, as the teacher, control those slides coming in. So as I'm ready to go ahead and move forward, I'll click forward onto the next slide. And you'll see that it's now changed that on the iPad. So it's asking now the students to shade in those parts. So as the student, I'm looking at here and it's telling me those instructions. I can choose to use the highlighter tool for this. And I might color in, it's asking me for 5/6, or down here for 3/8. And again, the students would go ahead and say send and confirm that. And it's going to push it back to the teacher. So again, as a teacher, I am either looking at this on a computer, a laptop, or on an iPad, or even on a phone. And here's that student response. And again, I can, as the teacher, quickly flip through all the student responses and get a really good idea of whether the students have an understanding of this. So you can see the power of that just-in-time feedback to really respond to my student needs in my class. Also could be used as a really effective exit ticket to kind of drive my instruction for the next day as well. So those are the draw it features. And again, here it's just highlighting an open response. So you can see it's asking them what a fraction is, and they can go and either type in or use the speech to text features. they're on an iPad. And they can give me their response and say send and confirm. And all the student responses would start to come in with the list of the whole class here. So just a quick way to show you the different types of responses and what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead in the top left here, and it's asking me would I like to leave. Yes, I do. And I'm back out to my library. So I'd like to take you back to the home screen now and show you. It's going to store all those student responses in here until you choose to delete them. So if I come into reports, it's going to have all of the lessons that I've launched. And as I click on that one we just launched, it will tell you the times and dates that you launched those, how many students participated. And it starts with an overall summary here, how many students participated in it. And then I can go through each question that I had. I had an open-ended one. I click on that, it's going to list all the students and all their responses and how many participated. And if I go to the Draw It feature, I can click on any of the questions and it would have all the students, all their drawings, and again, I could choose to click on that and review that. And that's going to store all of that right into your reports for you attached to your account. So a really powerful assessment tool that you can use there. And I'm going to come back out to the home page and I'm going to come back into my library and I'm just going to show you another option of what that could look like. So here I'm going to go ahead and launch a new section. And it's going to generate that new code. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that as if I'm a student. And again, it's going to take just a moment to load that, and it's going to ask again for the student's name. And once I have all my students in, again, I can tell in the top left how many students are in, and it saves that code just in case a student gets bumped out. And I can go ahead and flip through this. So what I've done is actually just taken a screenshot of an online article, and I've put that right in for the students. And if I click over to the iPad, you'll see what it looks like on the student view. And as I go through that article, I'm actually using this to have the students read right on the device, this particular article. And so I've entered that as content, but now I'm going to enter in a question. So I've asked them an open-ended question, what the main idea is, and some multiple choice questions here. Some more multiple choice questions. And I've also added in a Draw It feature. So what I've done is taken that article and I've asked them a question, and the students then can come in and kind of highlight in the article where they think that response might be. And they can send that to me. And again, that's going to come in as a drawing that I can quickly flip through and get a really good idea of the student's understanding of this article and where I need to go with my instruction from this point. So I'm going to come back out of here now, just really quickly to show you some other options that you could use this for. So we're talking about those different types of assessment. So you can see here in math, again, whether it's a Minds On or an exit ticket, I can really get a quick snapshot of what my students understand from those drawing pieces. A really powerful way to use this, if you're not fully committed yet to trying to run a whole lesson on Nearpod, is you can simply use it with blank slides. So when you create your presentation and you go to add an activity and you go to the Draw It feature, you can just leave a bunch of blank slides there. So now as you're doing any particular activity in your class, you can have students go ahead and on the spot enter onto those blank slides. And you can see in this image here, a student's actually taken a photograph of what they were working on, and then they were able to draw over top and add some extra information. So a really great way to get started with assessment is just to create blank slides and use them in the moment in your lessons in class as those moments arise. And here the students annotated over top and is kind of explaining their thinking there. Here we have a student who's taking a photo of actual manipulatives and then adding their thoughts on top of that. So So really great use of using just those blank slides. Perhaps maybe during a shared reading experience, you could have the students summarizing the article on a blank slide. Or during presentations, they could be collecting some of the key information. And a really great way to collect that in a digital way. So when we're using that assessment to drive our instruction, the possibilities are really endless with Nearpod and those blank slides. So we can collect that data and use that to clarify the understanding and share learning with each other. We can also use it to kind of drive discussions or future tasks and activities that we really want to elicit out of those students and that learning. We can use it to provide feedback and move those learners forward. So I can really intervene with my students in the moment on the spot when I can see what they're giving me, or regroup them during a particular lesson. We're also talking about advocating students as learning resources for each other and being able to kind of group and regroup students to help each other out, and also really making students owners of their own learning. I'm just going to leave you with this short video on assessment.
Okay, so we're really looking at those different uses in Nearpod and how we can really help guide the students and improve their learning, and also direct our instruction to fit their needs there. So again, that effective feedback occurs during that learning while it's live and while we still have time to act on that. So it's definitely an ongoing thing before we get to that assessment of learning in that final product. We are going to go into a feature of Microsoft Excel in the survey feature. And I just am pausing for a moment to give you a friendly reminder that we are here to answer your questions. So if anything comes up, or if you have feedback for us that you would like us to slow down or repeat something, by all means, leave us a comment. And we are here every Tuesday and Thursday. So if you find maybe you have some questions after you try Nearpod or some of these tools and you want to come back and ask, we can help you through that. Okay, so in Office 365, once you log in and you launch the Excel piece, we're going to just take a peek on how you can use that to document assessment of your students. Whoop. One too far. There we go.
Get started. We're coming into Office 365 and coming into Excel Online. So again, just off the menu here. When you come in, you're looking here for the survey in the toolbar, and to begin a new survey, you'll go ahead and enter in your information and click on the question to edit your types of question and add new questions. If you'd like a little further detail on that, you can watch the video of our beginner session using Excel survey on the YouTube channel. So I'm just going to take you and show you one that I created here. So we were looking at a way of assessing the students and documenting some observations. What we were looking at was non-standard measurement. And I've created some questions here, and you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead and come in to edit this notebook so we can just go through those questions and see how I've set that up. So as you can see, what I've started with here as the title, and again, this is just for teacher documentation, looking at assessment as learning. So I've copied my expectation that we were using, and I've gone ahead and inserted the learning goal here. And underneath, I also just made a note for myself about what the activity was that I did with the students. So now I can come in and when I'm ready to do observations with the students, or perhaps they're engaged in activities with manipulatives around the room. So as a teacher, I'm using this to document what I'm seeing here. Because this was after multiple experiences with the students and we'd already created success criteria, I'll just quickly show you what that looked like. So we'd been working on this, as you can see, gone through some experiences of assessment for learning and have created this success criteria. So now this was that kind of assessment where I wanted to document some of that. And you can see here that I've copied the success criteria as each kind of question here in my survey and made a note underneath for myself as well as to what I was looking for that. So for example, you know down here in the bottom where you share your survey, kind of what I do when I'm walking around as an educator. I use my tablet, but again, you could use a phone or a laptop. I like the tablet in my hand, just it was efficient for me to use. So all I did then was pretend I was someone filling out this survey. And in Explorer, I just went ahead and opened it like I was going to fill it out here. And now I can watch the students and kind of communicate with them and focus on those conversations that I'm having and observations to do this assessment. So as I come in, I could just test this, student's name, the date, my records. And again, now my observations are around an activity and exploration with manipulatives that I had set up with the students. So I'm just making sure that they've chosen kind of the right and same units to repeat with those non-standard manipulatives. So they were using blocks and paper clips and things like that. So I would make my observation where I felt the student fit for all of these. And again, I've taken that right from the success criteria, so the students are really aware of what we're looking for. And then here, I can set kind of those next steps and give some descriptive feedback. Oops. So I can go ahead and put that descriptive feedback in and submit that. And what I can do is just repeat that as I go around the room, kind of making those observations of the students engaged in that activity. It allows me to focus on asking questions to make sure I have a deep understanding of what they're doing. And then as I come back here, you'll see that automatically comes in. And what's great about having it like this is, as you can see kind of across the top, the questions are there. And if I want to change that order or whatever I want to do with it, you can see I have the student and I can easily see the levels that I've assigned there. And I've gone ahead and I can kind of see the next steps and descriptive feedback that I'm setting for the students. So as I'm kind of looking at this assessment piece, and I just want to come out and highlight for you this chart. So if we're taking a look at this triangulation of assessment here in the middle, we know we're working with the observations, conversations, and products. And in this case, I was kind of bouncing in between some of these. The students were engaged in this activity. They had traced their partners in their group onto chart paper and used these non-standard manipulatives to measure themselves and then order themselves. So when I'm looking at the three types of assessment here in the corners, when I come out, I look at this as a cycle. And what I'm doing now is I'm reflecting on that assessment and analyzing it. And what I'm going to do is to use that to target my instruction. So in this case, because I'm going to be recreating a similar activity with the students, I'm really going to be analyzing today the levels that I've assigned them and using that to regroup my students. So for tomorrow's experience, that I will be able to pull some of those students in for a little guided activity. So as I come back out to look at that data, the one particular one that I'm noticing there was kind of more differentiation in here with the levels was the success criteria around putting those non-standard objects end to end when measuring. So I'm able to see here some students had some difficulty with that, and I can reflect on that observation. And what I'm realizing is some of the students are having a hard time making sure that those are end to end and touching to get a uniform measurement. So I can see here for tomorrow's guided group, I might pull these particular students together so that I could work a little bit more closely with that group and give some feedback. So it's a neat way to kind of document this because I can go ahead and really scan over this really quickly to make those observations. The other thing that I like to do is, because I've already typed in this descriptive feedback into my observations, and I type it in a way like I'm speaking to the student. And what I've done, I'm just going to pop up here for a minute to show you. In in Word Online in Office 365, what I've done is I've created a folder, a math folder, where I keep my observations here. And I've created a page for each student. And what that is, and I'm just going to come in and show you, is I've just created a page in Word that I've shared with that student and that student only. So the only people in this document are the student and myself. So what I can do is, when I'm in that Excel sheet, oops, and I just lost it here for a sec. I can come in here and just copy this in the cell, copy, and then I can come back over into that observation page and paste it in, sorry. So what this allows is a place to kind of keep those ongoing observations and allow that student to come in and read them. So you might set something up with your student where when they read them, they would maybe come in and change the color of comments so that you're kind of aware that they read it. So that way you and the student could have ongoing dialogue. And if they wanted to leave a comment for you or had a question and you wanted to, you could come up here to insert and leave a little comment. For that student. And again, you'll see that icon here for comment pops up. And it allows for a reply, so the student and I can reply back and forth in that comment box. And we kind of know to check in there and look. So a nice way to kind of organize that. And usually what I do is just leave that folder, that math folder with all the students open. And as I'm quickly doing those and analyzing these observations, sure, I just copy and paste those over. That way I have a full class set of observations for analyzing, and then I also have a way to feed the students that descriptive feedback. So just one way, again, that you can look at Excel as an assessment tool.
Okay, so I'm just going to pop back out so you can see me here for one moment. So again, just looking at sometimes using the technology as a way for us as educators to document the assessment, share descriptive feedback, and keep ongoing records of the different types of assessment we do. Just looking at some of the feedback coming in, we noticed that for some of you that was a little bit blurry to see. So what I will do is I'm going to re-record that piece of it and post it on our YouTube channel, DPCDSB Chats. So it's in a clearer version. So if you're ready to try that out and you'd like to see it a little bit clearer, by all means, you can come back to our YouTube channel and see that piece again. Okay, we're going to go back. We have a little bit of time left here just to quickly highlight this with you. So I just want to point out, as we were talking through Excel, the idea of the assessment cycle. And we commonly talk about the assessment as, for, and of, and they fit nicely right into this centerpiece with the triangulation. So all three types of assessment can occur, whether it's through a product, an observation, or a conversation. And as we look at those three pieces of the triangle, we come out to each one of them being a type of assessment. And then we go around the outside of this cycle. As we assess, we do some reflections on our assessments, and then we analyze the data and we do some reflections on that. and then we plan and target our next piece of instruction. So it really is a continuous cycle that allows us to have that ongoing dialogue. And we just have enough time. I'm going to take you in quickly to show you another tool. And where I'll take you in is into Kahoot. So if you're familiar with Kahoot, again, if you're looking for a slower kind of step-by-step, there is a pre-recorded session of Kahoot on the YouTube channel. So if you would like to look through this slower, by all means, you can do that. What I wanted to highlight for you on the assessment piece, if you're familiar with Kahoot, is if I'm in my library of Kahoots, and I would like to take a look at where that data is saved. So if I'm using it for assessment purposes, every time I've run a Kahoot, if I come up to my profile up here where it says My Results, what it's going to do is it's going to pull up the library of all the Kahoots I've run, and it's actually stored that data. So you'll notice here that I can choose to download that data, and if I click that, what happens is it actually pulls it open here into an Excel spreadsheet. So I can see the student's name, the questions that I would have launched in the Kahoot, and their responses. And you'll notice that it uses color, so green for correct answers and red for non-correct answers. So again, a quick way to gather data and analyze it. Also within, within that Kahoot, you're going to notice that there's this little purple button that has a ghost on it. And that's a new feature called Ghost Mode. And if you come in here and you launch Ghost Mode, it will launch the session again. But what happens is it is allowing the students to play against themselves. So they can try to beat their score from a previous Kahoot. So a great way to perhaps use this as an assessment as learning in the beginning, and then come back and revisit at a different point through your unit and see how the students' thinking has changed and if they've developed along there. So I just wanted to highlight that for you. A lot of people are unaware that you can save the results from Kahoot, just like you can in Nearpod. Okay. And again, I'm going to come back out here and join you. So as far as Kahoot, if you have never experienced Kahoot, there is, again, a step-by-step instruction on how to build the Kahoot and how to launch it and how to find pre-made Kahoots and use them on our YouTube channel. It's a quick little 20-minute tutorial. So you can continue if you'd like to review that if you've never used Kahoot. We just wanted to highlight for you today how you could store and use those assessment pieces for analyzing. So thank you so much for coming in. We do apologize for the glitch at the beginning, getting up and running. On that page where you signed in at the very bottom, there is a link to an exit ticket. And if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that'll help us plan out future sessions. And just as a reminder that we're here every Tuesday and Thursday, and you can answer your questions live. And we do run the short tutorials on Tuesday. So we will replay this piece of Excel and Kahoot on the Tuesdays in February. But you can also go ahead and watch them on the YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great Thursday.